The Hindu Kush mountains rose like the teeth of some ancient god, jagged, unforgiving, indifferent to the ambitions of men. At 8,000 feet, the air tasted thin and metallic, each breath a reminder that this was a place where the careless died and the strong merely survived. Maya Kincaid lay prone on a shelf of rock that jutted from the mountainside like a broken promise. 27 years old, 5'3", 118 pounds, soaking wet. The kind of woman most men looked through rather than at. That invisibility had served her well for 6 years. Today, it would end. The custom Macmillan TAC-50 rifle beneath her hands weighed 42 pounds of precision-machined steel and carbon fiber. Her father's rifle. The stock was worn smooth where his cheek had pressed against it 10,000 times, the barrel scarred by desert sand and mountain grit. Along the receiver, etched in letters he'd carved himself with a trembling hand the night before his last deployment. Reaper's legacy, for Maya. Through the scope, 3,247 meters away, a balcony materialized in crystalline detail. Stone walls the color of ancient bone, a wooden door weathered by decades of mountain wind, and standing there, backlit by the rising sun, a man in traditional robes scanning the mountains with binoculars. Rashid al-Zahrani, the Viper, 57 years old with a gray beard and eyes that had watched too many people die. The man who'd planned an ambush in Fallujah 20 years ago with one specific purpose: to kill Gunnery Sergeant James Reaper Kincaid, Maya's father. Beside her, Commander Garrett Iron lowered his spotting scope. 62 years old, 6'1", weathered by 4 decades of combat that had carved lines into his face like topographic maps of old wars. A scar bisected his left eyebrow, souvenir from Ramadi, courtesy of shrapnel that should have killed him, but didn't, because Reaper Kincaid had made an impossible shot at 1,600 meters. "Wind's shifting," Garrett said, voice barely above a whisper. 12 miles per hour now, 3 o'clock. You've got maybe 8 seconds before he goes back inside. Maya's heart rate, elevated from the climb and the adrenaline, began to slow. 68 beats per minute. She controlled her breathing. 4-count inhale through the nose, pause, 6-count exhale through the mouth. 62 beats per minute, 58, 54. The mathematics flowed through her mind like water finding its level. 3,247 meters. Elevation angle, -4.3 degrees. Temperature, -2 Celsius, which meant muzzle velocity would drop approximately 32 feet per second from standard. Barometric pressure, 26.8 inches of mercury. Added 4.1 minutes of angle. Wind, 12 miles per hour from 3 o'clock, required 8.8 minutes of angle. Right correction. Coriolis effect at this latitude added 0.8 minutes of angle. Right. Spin drift from the bullet's rotation added another 1.1. Total adjustment, 341.2 minutes of angle elevation, 9.1 minutes of angle windage. Her hands moved with the autonomy of 10 years of secret practice. 85 clicks up, 36 clicks right. Each click a quarter minute of angle. Each adjustment the difference between mission success and catastrophic failure. "He's turning," Garrett whispered. "Urgent now. 6 seconds, Maya. 5. The crosshairs settled between Rashid al-Zahrani's shoulder blades. Maya found the space between heartbeats where the universe went still and silent, where time became elastic and breath became prayer. Her finger, feather light on the trigger, began to squeeze. The Macmillan TAC-50 roared, 50 caliber fury, 750 grains of copper-jacketed lead erupting from the barrel at 2,800 feet per second. Recoil slammed into Maya's shoulder with 36 foot-pounds of energy, enough to break bones if you weren't braced for it. She absorbed it, rode it, stayed on target through the scope, and watched. The bullet climbed through thin mountain air, arcing upward before gravity and physics conspired to pull it down. Wind pushed it right. The Earth's rotation tugged it further right. 4.2 seconds of flight time. An eternity compressed into a heartbeat. Through her scope, Maya watched Rashid al-Zirani half turn toward the door. Watched him take one step. Watched the bullet arrive. Impact. The 50 caliber round struck between his shoulder blades with 8,400 foot-pounds of kinetic energy. His body jerked forward like a puppet whose strings had been cut. He collapsed through the doorway and disappeared from view. "Hit," Garrett said, voice tight with something that might have been awe. "Confirmed hit. Target down." Maya chambered another round automatically, training overriding thought. Kept the scope on the empty balcony, watching for movement, watching for threats. Nothing. "Confirmed kill," Garrett said quietly. "Holy God, Maya. 3,247 meters. That's a world record." The compound below erupted into chaos. Fighters poured from buildings like disturbed ants. Alarm bells clanged. Voices shouted in Pashto and Arabic. The mountains absorbed the noise and threw it back as echoes. "Time to move," Garrett said, already packing his spotting scope with professional speed. "Security sweeps closing. 4 minutes to contact." But Maya couldn't move yet. She stared through the scope at that empty balcony where a man had stood 14 seconds ago, breathing and alive and dangerous. Now he was just meat and memory. The man who'd killed her father was dead. Justice delivered at 3,247 meters. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times. Justice delivered, her father avenged. But standing there, with cordite still sharp in her nostrils and a dead man 3,000 meters away, Maya felt nothing, just numbness. Like someone had carved out the part of her that was supposed to feel vindication and left a void in its place. "Maya," Garrett's hand on her shoulder, firm. "We need to move, now." She nodded, packed the rifle with mechanical precision, forcing her hands steady through pure will, not from fear, from the enormity of what she'd just done, from the knowledge that she'd crossed a line her father had crossed, and there was no going back. They ran. The Hindu Kush Mountains, indifferent to human drama, watched as two figures sprinted across rock and scree, pursued by men with guns who didn't know they were chasing ghosts. Behind them, 3,247 meters of empty air between a dead man and the woman who'd killed him. Ahead, extraction and aftermath, and all the questions Maya Kincaid wasn't ready to answer. But that was later. That was the weight she'd carry home. This was just the shot. The screen went black. White text appeared. 3 weeks earlier. Maya's workshop smelled like gun oil and metal shavings. She preferred it that way. Clean, honest, predictable. The scent reminded her of her father, the though the memories came wrapped in pain she'd learned to ignore, like an old injury that only ached when the weather changed. At 27, she'd perfected the art of being overlooked. Standing 5'3" in her work boots, wearing oversized coveralls that hid her frame, she moved through Quantico Marine Base like a ghost, present but unnoticed, there but invisible. The Marines who brought their rifles for calibration saw a pretty face and dismissed the mind behind it. They called her Barbie with a Barrett when they thought she couldn't hear. She heard everything, had learned to catalog the insults, store them away, use them as fuel for the secret fire that burned in the hours after midnight when she drove 40 miles outside Alexandria to a private range where no one asked questions and no one knew her name. Maya ran her fingers along the barrel of an M40A3 sniper rifle, checking for imperfections with the precision of a surgeon examining a patient. The morning sun cut through the workshop's single window, illuminating dust particles that danced like stars in her private universe. Perfect bore, she murmured to herself, peering through the barrel toward the light. Zero throat erosion. This rifle's been babied. The door burst open without warning. Maya's hand instinctively moved toward the Sig Sauer P226 she kept hidden beneath her workbench, a habit from a life she pretended not to have lived. But she recognized the silhouette immediately. Colonel Frank Holloway filled the doorway like a monument to a war that never really ended. 68 years old, shoulders still carrying the weight of command, though he'd officially retired from the Marine Corps 5 years ago. Silver hair military short, blue eyes sharp enough to cut glass. A silver star from his service, pinned to a shadow box in his office, earned for actions he never discussed with people who hadn't been there. "Maya," he said, not a greeting, a statement. She straightened, wiping her hands on a rag that had seen cleaner days. "Colonel, you don't usually visit my workshop. This isn't a social call." Holloway stepped inside, closing the door behind him with deliberate care. The click of the latch sounded final, like a coffin lid. "I need you." Maya felt her stomach tighten. She'd known this moment would come eventually, had dreaded it, had somehow, in the darkest hours of sleepless nights, longed for it in ways she couldn't explain to herself. "I'm an equipment tech," she said carefully, each word chosen with the precision she used to measure rifle tolerances. "I fix rifles. I don't use them." "Stop." Holloway's voice cut like a blade through her deflection. "I've known you since you were 7 years old, since your father—" "Don't." The word came out sharper than she intended. Maya took a breath, forced her voice level. "My father died 20 years ago. That doesn't make me him." Holloway pulled a tablet from his jacket, tapped the screen twice, and turned it toward her. The image froze her blood. The man on screen stood on a balcony carved into mountainside. Afghan mountains by the terrain. He wore traditional robes, but his eyes held a predator's calculation. Late 50s, maybe 60, with a gray beard and a face that had watched too many people die without feeling anything about it. "Rashid al-Zahrani," Holloway said quietly. "They call him the Viper. Taliban commander. Responsible for 17 attacks on U.S. forces in the last 3 years. 63 American soldiers dead. 38 wounded." Maya stared at the screen, her throat dry. "Why are you showing me this?" "Because 20 years ago, in November 2004, Rashid al-Zahrani planned an ambush in Fallujah." Holloway's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "An ambush specifically designed to kill one man. Your father. The workshop seemed to tilt. Maya gripped the edge of her workbench, knuckles white. James Reaper Kincaid, Holloway continued. Gunnery sergeant, scout sniper. The best I ever trained. Al-Zirani knew Reaper was the greatest threat to his network. So he sacrificed 14 of his own men to set a trap. Your father identified it as a trap. Intel was too clean, setup too convenient. Holloway paused, and in that pause, Maya heard all the things he wasn't saying. He knew, Maya said. Her voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. And he went anyway. 40 Marines were pinned down 2 clicks away. They needed covering fire, needed time to retreat. Your father calculated the odds, made his assessment, and volunteered for Overwatch. Holloway's eyes held hers. He chose them over himself. Maya closed her eyes. Her father's face materialized in the darkness behind her eyelids. His gentle smile, his patient hands showing her how to breathe, how to squeeze a trigger between heartbeats, how to read wind in the dance of grass and leaves. Teaching her things she'd pretended not to understand because she was 7 years old and didn't want to think about killing. Why are you telling me this now? Because Rashid al-Zirani is still alive, still killing American soldiers. And we finally found him. Holloway swiped the screen, showing satellite imagery of a compound nestled in Afghan mountains, like a tumor in healthy tissue. He appears twice a week, 14 seconds on a balcony. That's our window. Send a drone strike. Too many civilians in the compound. Wrong optics. We need precision. Holloway looked at her with an intensity that made her want to run. We need a sniper. Maya laughed, but the sound held no humor. It was the laugh of someone who'd just been told the universe had a sick sense of irony. The shot's over 3,000 meters in mountains with unpredictable wind. You have an entire Marine Corps full of snipers. Why? Because our primary is injured, training accident, shattered shoulder, because this mission deploys in 72 hours. Holloway set the tablet on her workbench, and because the team lead is someone your father trained, Commander Garrett Iron, former SEAL, now military contractor. He was with your father in Fallujah. Reaper saved his life that day. The name hit like a fist. Maya had heard it before, in her father's letters, the ones she'd found after his death, written but never sent. Letters where Reaper spoke of his best student, a young SEAL with instinct that transcended training. What's my role? Her voice sounded hollow. Equipment specialist, officially. Backup sniper, unofficially. Holloway's eyes softened, the only crack in his armor. Maya, I've watched you practice at that range 40 miles outside Alexandria. I've known for 4 years what you do every night, what you are. Heat rushed to her face, anger, shame, something else she couldn't name. You've been following me. Protecting you, like I promised Reaper I would. Holloway leaned against the workbench. You inherited your father's gift, maybe exceeded it. But you've been hiding, living small, pretending to be less than you are. Why? Maya's hands trembled. She pressed them flat against the cold metal of the bench. Because everyone who knew Reaper expects me to be him, to fill his boots, to carry his legacy. Her voice broke. I can't be him. I'm just Maya. You're wrong. Holloway straightened. You're not just Maya. You're the woman who shoots 1 MOA groups at 1,000 yards, who can read wind like your father read books, who has a gift that comes once in a generation. He picked up the tablet. And you're the only person who can kill the man who murdered Reaper. The workshop fell silent, except for the distant sound of Marines training, their cadence calls drifting through walls like ghosts of wars past and wars to come. Maya looked at her hands, mechanic's hands, scarred from metal edges and hot rifle barrels, but steady, always steady. When do we leave? The conference room smelled like stale coffee and testosterone. 5 men sat around a table covered with satellite imagery, weapon specs, and mission parameters typed in 12-point font that somehow made death seem bureaucratic. Maya stood in the doorway, still wearing her coveralls, feeling every eye turn toward her like searchlights. The man at the head of the table stood slowly. The scar on his left eyebrow caught the light as he assessed her in 3 seconds. Commander Garrett Iron. The photographs hadn't captured the intensity of his pale blue eyes, or the way he carried authority like other men carried weapons. "Frank," Garrett said, not looking at Holloway. "I asked for a sniper. This is a tech." "This is Maya Kincaid." Holloway's voice carried the weight of non-negotiable fact. Garrett's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Recognition. Maybe pain. "James Kincaid's daughter." "Yes." "I respected Reaper more than any man I've served with." Garrett's voice carried the flat authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "He saved my life twice. I owe him everything." He paused, and in that pause, Maya heard the but coming. But respect doesn't win firefights. Experience does. She's a tech. This is Tier 1 work. Maya felt the familiar burn of dismissal, that special kind of erasure reserved for women in men's spaces. She'd learned long ago that arguing only made it worse, so she stayed silent, watching, cataloging weaknesses. The other 4 men studied her with expressions ranging from skepticism to outright hostility. Dr. Owen Sterling, the team called him Doc, had the lean build and watchful eyes of a man who'd seen too many friends die. British accent. Former Army Ranger, now contractor. 58 years old, according to the brief Holloway had given her. He sipped coffee and said nothing, but his eyes were kind. Victor Maddox looked like his nickname. Bull. Massive shoulders, barrel chest, hands that could crush walnuts. The heavy weapons specialist wore a Texas Ranger's cap and contempt like a second skin. 58 years old, ex-Marine, the kind of man who measured worth in pounds you could lift and miles you could ruck. Luther Banks, the communications specialist, had the calculating look of someone who trusted technology more than people. 47, former Navy intelligence, pragmatic, dangerous in the quiet way that mattered. His fingers never stopped moving, typing on a laptop, adjusting equipment, never making eye contact. Jackson Hayes sat apart from the others, Bible open on the table beside mission documents. They called him Preacher, the primary sniper. 52, graying beard. The 1,000-yard stare of someone who'd looked through a scope at another human being and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Kentucky accent that made every word sound like a prayer or a threat, depending on context. "Gentlemen," Garrett said, "mission brief. Target, Rashid al-Zahrani. Compound in Hindu Kush Mountains, eastern Afghanistan. Distance from optimal shooting position, 3,247 meters. Target appears Tuesday and Friday mornings, 0600 local time. 14 seconds maximum exposure." He tapped the satellite image. "Preacher is primary shooter. Miss Kincaid is..." "Maya," she said quietly. Garrett looked at her. Excuse me? My name is Maya, not Miss Kincaid. And if I'm on this team, use my name. The room went silent. Bull snorted. Doc raised an eyebrow. Luther typed something on his laptop, possibly updating his will. Preacher's hand moved almost imperceptibly toward the knife on his belt before stopping. Garrett studied her for 5 long seconds. Maya held his gaze, refused to look away, refused to give ground. Maya will provide equipment support and function as backup if needed, Garrett said finally. Backup. Preacher's voice carried the soft drawl of Kentucky hills. Sir, with respect, 3,000-meter shots aren't something you learn in a workshop. Agreed, Garrett said, which is why she'll qualify before we deploy. He turned to Maya. You want on my team? Prove it. Tomorrow, 0900, range 400, 1,000-yard standard Marine qualification. Pass is 7 out of 10. Your requirement is 10 out of 10. Perfect score. Maya met his eyes. Fair enough. Perfect score, Bull muttered. She'll fold like a cheap tent. Maya smiled, a small, cold expression that made her look exactly like her father's photographs. The ones Holloway kept in his office, the ones taken in Ramadi and Fallujah, where Reaper's eyes held that same quiet certainty. We'll see, Maya said. Dawn came to Virginia like a reluctant promise. Cold, gray. The kind of morning that made you question decisions made in warm offices far from consequences. Maya arrived 30 minutes early. She'd barely slept, spending most of the night in her apartment, disassembling and reassembling her father's rifle. A ritual she'd performed 1,000 times, muscle memory and meditation combined. The range stretched before her like Judgment Day. 1,000 yards of Virginia soil. Autumn grass brown from early frost. The distant target barely visible without magnification. Garrett's team assembled like pallbearers at a funeral. They brought coffee and thermoses and skepticism in their postures. Holloway stood apart, saying nothing. His faith in her either unshakable or cruelly misplaced. 8 Marine instructors gathered as well. Word had spread. The daughter of Reaper Kincaid was attempting qualification. They came to witness legacy or watch it crumble. Garrett checked his watch. You're early. Habit. Maya opened her rifle case slowly, deliberately. The Barrett M82A1 inside gleamed like a surgical instrument. Standard issue, not her father's rifle. That stayed home. Too sacred for this particular kind of proving. She assembled the rifle with economical movements. Stock, barrel, scope, magazine. Each click and snap precise. No wasted motion. The weapon came together in her hands like a puzzle she'd solved 10,000 times in her sleep. The weather briefed itself. 18 miles per hour crosswind from 3 o'clock. Temperature 42 degrees Fahrenheit. Cold bore. The barrel hadn't been warmed by previous shots, which meant her first round would fly different from the rest. Bull lit a cigarette. Money says she doesn't make it past shot 3. I'll take that action, Doc said quietly. 20 says she makes 7. 50 says she makes all 10, Holloway announced. Everyone turned to stare at him. That's a sucker bet, Colonel, Preacher said. Then take it. Preacher didn't. Maya settled into position, prone, bipod legs extended and firm against packed earth. Left hand supporting the stock, right hand feather light on the grip, finger outside the trigger guard until ready. The rifle weighed 30 pounds. The moment weighed more. She pressed her eye to the scope. The world narrowed to crosshairs and target. Wind and mathematics. Breathing and patience. Her father's voice echoed in memory, patient as sunrise.
Feel the wind, Maya. Don't calculate it. Feel it. She closed her eyes. Listened to the grass whisper secrets. Felt the cold air kiss her cheek from the right. Consistent. Steady. No gusts yet. 18 miles per hour meant she needed to adjust 4.2 minutes of angle right to compensate for wind drift at this distance. Temperature correction. 0.8 MOA for cold bore and ambient temperature. Total adjustment. 5 MOA right. 20 clicks.
Her hands moved with the autonomy of long practice, adjusting the scope's windage knob. Click, click, click. Each click a quarter minute of angle. 17 clicks right, 3 clicks down for cold bore. She opened her eyes, settled her breathing. 4 count inhale, 4 count exhale. Heart rate dropping from 68 to 56 beats per minute. The rifle became an extension of her body, no separation between flesh and metal. The target sat 1,000 yards downrange. 10-inch X-ring at the center. Hit that, you were a shooter. Hit it 10 times, you were a sniper. Maya inhaled, half exhaled, squeezed the trigger between heartbeats. The Barrett roared, 50 caliber fury. The recoil slammed into her shoulder like divine retribution. But she rode it, stayed on target through the scope, watching. 3 seconds later, the time it took the bullet to fly 1,000 yards, the target shuddered. Hit, one of the Marine instructors called through binoculars. X-ring. Bull dropped his cigarette. Lucky shot, he muttered. Maya didn't respond. She chambered the next round. The bolt action smooth as silk, settled back into position. Same wind, same calculations, same cold mechanical process that transformed thought into death at distance. Shot 2, X-ring. Shot 3, X-ring. Shot 4, X-ring. By shot 7, the Marines had stopped talking. The only sounds were wind through grass, the Barrett's periodic thunder, and the distant ting of bullets punching paper. Maya fired shot 8, then 9. Each report identical, each impact devastating. She chambered the 10th round, settling into the rifle one last time. Moving target, Garrett's shout cracked across the range like a whip. Before Maya could react, the downrange target began tracking left to right, pulled by cables she hadn't known existed. 4 miles per hour lateral movement. Not part of standard qualification. Not fair. Every instinct screamed protest. This wasn't the test. This was sabotage. But Maya's hands didn't listen to instinct. They listened to training. To 10 years of secret practice at that range outside Alexandria where she deliberately made conditions impossible. Moving targets, wind, rain, snow, darkness. Her father's voice from one of his letters. When conditions are perfect, you're not training. You're just confirming what you already know. Maya tracked the target through her scope, calculated lead time. At 1,000 yards, a target moving 4 miles per hour needed 18 inches of lead to compensate for both target movement and bullet flight time. She shifted aim, led the target, breathing controlled, heart rate steady, squeezed. The Barrett spoke its final judgment. 4 seconds of flight time felt like years. The bullet intercepted the target mid-movement, punching through the X-ring like destiny had always known exactly where that piece of copper-jacketed lead would end up. Hit! The Marine instructor's voice carried something that might have been awe. Dead center. Moving target. Maya safed the rifle and stood slowly. Her shoulder would bruise. 10 50 caliber rounds in rapid succession guaranteed that, but the pain felt distant, unimportant. She turned to face Garrett and his team. No one spoke. Garrett walked forward, boots crunching on gravel. He stopped 3 feet from her, close enough that she could see every line that combat had carved into his face. He looked at the Barrett in her hands. "That's quite a toy for a technician." The words hung in the cold morning air, dismissive, sharp. Maya felt something ignite in her chest. Not anger, something colder, more precise. She looked up at him, 6 inches of height difference that suddenly meant nothing. And her voice came out level, hard, absolutely calm. "You think that's a toy?" She didn't blink, didn't look away. "That's a Barrett 50 caliber. This rifle has more confirmed kills at extreme range than most snipers accumulate in entire careers. It's killed enemy combatants from distances you've never even attempted." She took 1 step closer, close enough to see his pupils dilate. "And I'm not a technician, Commander. I am James Kincaid's daughter, sir." The range fell into silence so complete that Maya could hear her own heartbeat, still steady at 56 beats per minute. Garrett stared at her. The calculation happening behind his eyes was almost visible. Reassessment, recognition, something that might have been respect fighting something that definitely was prejudice. Holloway's voice broke the moment. "Any other questions, Garrett?" Garrett's jaw tightened. He looked at Maya for 5 more seconds, then stepped back. "Gear up. Wheels up 0600 tomorrow. Welcome to the team, Kincaid." He turned and walked away, his men following like iron filings pulled by a magnet. Doc paused beside Maya. "That was either the bravest or stupidest thing I've seen in 30 years. He smiled slightly. "I'm hoping for brave." Maya watched them go, adrenaline finally beginning to fade, leaving exhaustion in its wake. Holloway approached quietly. "Your father would have been proud." "Would he?" Maya's voice cracked. "I don't even know if this is what I want or just what everyone expects. Maybe both. Maybe neither." Holloway looked toward the target 1,000 yards away, where 10 bullets had written their verdict. "But you're going." "Not for Reaper. Not for you. For me." Maya looked at the Barrett in her hands. Her father had carried a rifle just like it, had killed men with it, had died because of it. In a way, died because being a warrior meant walking into traps with eyes open. "I'm scared," she whispered. "Good. Fear makes you careful. Arrogance gets you killed." Holloway squeezed her shoulder gently. "Trust your training. Trust yourself." That night, Maya packed in her small Alexandria apartment. The ritual felt ceremonial, religious in its precision. Clothing designed for mountain cold, medical supplies, protein bars that tasted like cardboard but kept you alive, extra socks. Her father had been fanatical about dry socks. And then, from the back of her closet, she pulled out the hard case. The rifle inside wasn't standard issue. Custom Macmillan TAC 50, bolt action, 50 BMG, 42 pounds of precision engineering. Her father's rifle, left to her in a will she'd read once and never again, because the words hurt too much. The stock was worn where his cheek had pressed against it 10,000 times. The barrel showed micro scratches from desert sand and mountain grit. And engraved along the receiver, in letters her father had carved himself, "Reaper's Legacy, for Maya." She ran her fingers over the words, feeling their depth. I don't know if I can do this, Dad, she whispered to the empty apartment. I don't know if I'm enough. The rifle, of course, said nothing. But somewhere in her chest, in the place where memory lives stronger than reason, Maya heard her father's voice. You're more than enough, baby girl. You always have been. She closed the case gently, like tucking a child into bed. Tomorrow she would board a C-17 transport headed for war. Tomorrow she would face men who doubted her, a mission that might kill her, and a target who'd murdered the man who taught her everything that mattered. Tomorrow, Maya Kincaid would stop hiding. Tonight, she allowed herself one last moment of being small, of being scared, of being just a 27-year-old woman who missed her father and wished the world was different. Then she locked that feeling away, in the same place she kept her fear and her doubt, stood up, and started loading magazines. The C-17 Globemaster's engines screamed their metal prayer to physics and thrust. Maya sat in the cargo bay, surrounded by Garrett's team, the rifle case between her knees, heading toward mountains that had broken empires and men in equal measure. Garrett sat across from her, studying mission documents by red overhead light. After 20 minutes, he looked up. Your father, he said. Not a question, just an opening. Maya waited. Ramadi, 2003. Insurgent ambush on convoy. Reaper made a shot at 1,600 meters. 4 tangos. 7 seconds. Saved 38 Marines. Garrett's voice carried something Maya hadn't heard before. Reverence. I was the convoy commander. He never told me he could make that shot. Just did it. He never told me combat stories, Maya said quietly. Only training. Because he wanted me to have a choice. Wanted me to choose this life, not inherit it. Garrett folded the documents. Why workshop? Why hide what you are? Maya looked at the rifle case. Because being Reaper's daughter is like carrying a monument. Everyone expects greatness, excellence, legacy. And I'm just, you shot 10 for 10 with a moving target at the end. In cold bore conditions. Garrett leaned forward. You're not just anything. You're exceptional. Or lucky. Luck's what you call skill when you don't want to take credit for it. He paused. Out there, in Afghanistan, there's no room for hiding. People die when warriors pretend to be something less. And if I'm not good enough, then you would have missed. You didn't. Garrett's eyes held hers. Reaper trained you. I can see his methods in your shooting. But there's something else. Something yours. That's what makes you dangerous. The cargo bay shuddered through turbulence. Maya felt her stomach drop, then settle. Tell me about Fallujah, she said quietly. Garrett went still. What do you want to know? Everything. How he died, what he said, why he walked into that trap when you told him it was bait. Garrett was silent for 30 seconds, long enough that Maya thought he wouldn't answer. We knew something was wrong, he said finally. Intel was too perfect, set up too convenient. Reaper identified it as a trap within 5 minutes of reviewing the brief. I wanted to abort, but 40 Marines were pinned down 2 clicks away. They needed covering fire, needed time to retreat. So Dad volunteered. No, he ordered me to stand down. Said it had to be him because he was the best shot. Most experience, best chance of success. Garrett's voice dropped. His last words to me, before he moved to overwatch position. He looked away, and Maya saw something she hadn't expected to see in a man like Garrett Iron. Tears. He said, "Tell Maya 3 things. First, I chose those 40 men because I already had 27 years with her, and they deserved 50 more years with their families. Second, tell her I'm sorrier about missing her wedding than I am about dying. Third, tell her she's free from my shadow. She doesn't owe me glory. She owes herself happiness." Maya felt tears threaten, but refused them. Not here, not now. "I've carried that message for 20 years, Garrett said. Didn't know how to deliver it. Didn't know if you knew what you were. But watching you shoot yesterday," he shook his head, "you're already better than him. You just don't know it yet." The C-17 began its descent toward Bagram Airfield. Maya felt the pressure change in her ears, the shift from journey to arrival. "Commander Garrett," he corrected. "On this team, we use first names. Hierarchy matters less than trust. Garrett, when we're in position, if the shot comes to me instead of Preacher, will you trust me?" Garrett looked at her for a long time, the kind of look that weighs souls and measures worth. "Ask me again when we're on target." Which wasn't yes, but it wasn't no either. The plane touched down hard, tires screaming against runway, and Maya Kincaid arrived in Afghanistan, carrying her father's rifle and a legacy she'd spent 20 years running from. But running, she was beginning to understand, only worked until the moment you turned around and faced what was chasing you. And Maya was done running. The Chinook helicopter descended through Afghan airspace like a falling stone. Through the open door, Maya watched the Hindu Kush rise to meet them, mountains older than memory, indifferent to the ambitions of empires that had tried and failed to conquer them. The Soviets had bled here, the British before them. Now Americans brought their technology and their certainty to these ancient peaks, convinced they would somehow be different. The helicopter touched down at Firebase Phoenix in a storm of rotor wash and dust. Maya stepped off the ramp into cold that bit through her tactical gear and found her bones. -5°C, wind at 12 miles per hour, gusting to 18. The kind of cold that made metal stick to skin, that turned breath to ice crystals, that killed careless soldiers in their sleep. 8,000 feet elevation. The air tasted thin and metallic, each breath a conscious effort. Maya felt her lungs burn with the effort of extracting oxygen from atmosphere that didn't want to give it up. "Welcome to Hell's waiting room," Bull said, shouldering his pack. 240 pounds of Texas attitude and skepticism. "Frost gets in your weapon up here. You better hope that fancy rifle of yours doesn't jam when it matters." Maya said nothing. She'd already done the calculations. At this altitude and temperature, her bullet's ballistic coefficient would change. Less air resistance meant flatter trajectory, but also more wind drift. The cold would affect powder burn rate, reducing muzzle velocity by approximately 30 feet per second. These were the kinds of details that separated good snipers from dead ones. Firebase Phoenix clung to the mountainside like a barnacle to a ship's hull. Desperate, stubborn, refusing to be dislodged. Sandbags and HESCO barriers and concertina wire transformed geology into military geometry. Young Marines moved with the exhausted purpose of men who'd been at war too long. The Firebase commander, a Marine captain who looked 12 years old and exhausted beyond his years, briefed them in a plywood hut that smelled like diesel fuel in desperation. Target compound is here. He tapped a satellite image, blown up to poster size. 8 kilometers northwest. Elevation, 9,200 feet. Intel confirms Al-Zirani maintains primary residence. Appears on eastern balcony Tuesday and Friday mornings, 0600 local. Approximately 14 seconds. Approximately. Preacher leaned forward, his Kentucky drawl sharpening with professional interest. 12 to 16 seconds.
Variable. He's not setting a timer.
What's security? Garrett asked. 30 to 40 fighters. Patrols are predictable. They sweep the perimeter every 4 hours. Your infiltration window is 2200 tonight. Next patrol is 0200 tomorrow. Maya studied the compound through the grainy satellite resolution. 3 buildings arranged in a U shape. The eastern balcony jutted from the main structure like an afterthought. Maybe 6 feet wide, 30 feet above ground level. No cover, no concealment. Anyone standing there for 14 seconds was either stupid or confident. Rashid Al-Zirani was not stupid. Optimal shooting position. Garrett's finger traced the map. Here. Ridge designated Echo 7. 3,247 meters from target balcony. Maya's mind converted instantly. 2 miles plus another 135 feet. The kind of distance where bullets fell more than they flew, where wind became your enemy or ally, depending on how well you read its intentions. Wind conditions? Preacher asked. Variable. 8 to 15 miles per hour. Direction shifts with thermal currents. Morning shoot window gets the calmest conditions. Which meant still nearly impossible. Garrett looked at his team. Questions? Just one, Maya said quietly. Everyone turned. Has anyone actually confirmed Al-Zirani appears exactly at 0600? Or is that an average of observed appearances? The captain blinked. Intel report says 0600. That's not what I asked. Silence stretched. The captain shuffled papers, found a different document. Observations over 6 months. Appearances range from 0553 to 0609. So we have a 16-minute window where he might appear for 14 seconds. Maya looked at Garrett. That changes timing calculations for security avoidance. Garrett's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes shifted. Recognition, maybe reassessment. Good catch. We adjust patrol timing based on 0550 window. They departed Firebase Phoenix at 2200 hours under a moonless sky. The Hindu Kush swallowed them like Jonah into the whale. Dark, absolute, transformative. Maya carried 104 pounds, 62-pound ruck, 42-pound Macmillan TAC 50. Her own body weight was 118 pounds. The math was simple and brutal. She was carrying 88% of her body weight across 18 kilometers of mountain terrain, climbing 1,200 feet in elevation, in temperatures that would kill exposed skin in minutes. Bull set the pace. Fast, aggressive, testing. Maya understood the game. Prove you can't keep up. Prove you don't belong. She'd seen this dance before in 100 small ways throughout her life. Doors held closed, opportunities withheld, respect conditioned on meeting standards no one else had to meet. So she kept pace, controlled her breathing. 4 counts in through the nose, 6 counts out through the mouth. Oxygenation maximized. Heart rate steady at 118 beats per minute. High, but sustainable. The mountains unfolded in shades of darkness. Rock and scree and patches of snow that glowed faintly in starlight. The team moved in tactical column, 30 feet between each operator, weapons ready, eyes scanning. Doc dropped back beside Maya after the first hour. Even in the darkness, she could feel his assessment. "You holding up?" "Yes, sir." "That pack is heavy." "I know, I'm fine." He studied her for a moment, then nodded and moved forward again. But she heard him say something to Garrett. Too quiet to make out the words, but the tone was approval. At 03:15, they were 8 kilometers from Firebase Phoenix and 8 kilometers from target compound. Halfway. In the valley between destinations, where soldiers were most vulnerable. Luther, walking point, stopped suddenly. His fist went up. The universal military signal for freeze. Everyone stopped. Maya's hand moved to her M4 carbine, selector switch from safe to semi with a click that sounded too loud in the mountain silence. Luther knelt, examining the trail. His hand moved slowly, tracing something in the dirt. Then he looked back at Garrett, and even in the darkness, Maya could see the fear in his eyes. "Wire," Luther whispered. The word hit like electricity. Maya's training kicked in before thought. She froze completely, not even breathing. Every muscle locked. IED. Improvised explosive device. Hidden pressure plate or tripwire connected to artillery shells or homemade explosives. The Hindu Kush was littered with them, leftover from Soviet occupation, from Taliban resistance, from decades of war layered on war like geological strata. "Nobody move," Garrett's voice carried absolute authority. "Luther, can you trace it?" Luther pulled out a red lens flashlight, the kind that preserved night vision. He swept the beam slowly across the trail. The thin wire glinted like a spider's web in the red light, stretched across the path at ankle height. "Trace goes that way," Luther pointed right, into rocks. "I can't see the device without—" The world exploded. Maya never knew what triggered it. Maybe Luther's light. Maybe a pressure plate they hadn't seen. Maybe the device was on a timer, and their arrival was just catastrophically bad luck. The blast picked her up and threw her backward like a child's toy. She flew through air, no control, no orientation, just force and momentum, and the certainty that this was how she would die. She hit rock hard. Her helmet cracked against stone and stars bloomed behind her eyes. Constellations of pain. The ringing in her ears drowned out everything. No sound, just a high-pitched whine like the universe screaming. Maya lay still, checking for damage. Fingers moved. Toes moved. Legs responded. Arms functioned. She tasted copper, blood from a split lip or bitten tongue. She rolled onto her hands and knees, shaking her head to clear it. The world swam, then slowly stabilized. The blast site was a crater, smoke and dust still rising. The team was scattered, dark shapes on the ground, some moving, some terrifyingly still. "Report!" Garrett's voice cut through the ringing. "Sound off!" "Doc, operational." The medic was already moving, checking bodies. "Bull, good." The big Texan stood, limping but mobile. "Luther, concussed, but functional." "Maya." She tried to speak. Coughed. Tried again. "Operational." "Preacher." Silence. Doc reached him first. Maya saw the medic's body language change. The sudden urgency. The quick movements. She struggled to her feet,
ignoring the protest from her ribs, and moved toward them.
Preacher lay on his side, right arm bent at an unnatural angle. Blood covered the right side of his face. His breathing was shallow, rapid, the sound of lungs struggling. Shrapnel to shoulder and face, Doc reported, hands already working. Pressure bandages appearing like magic. Right eye damaged, possible skull fracture. He needs medevac now. Garrett was already on the radio. Phoenix Actual, this is Hunter 7, IED strike. 1 urgent surgical. Request immediate dust-off. Static, then. Hunter 7, Phoenix Actual. Negative on dust-off. Weather system moving in. Bird can't fly in these conditions. ETA for medevac 48 hours minimum. 48 hours. Garrett's voice was flat. Hill. I'm aware, Hunter 7. I'm sorry. You're on your own. Garrett stared at the radio like he could will it to give different answers. Then he looked at his team. At Preacher, bleeding and broken. At the target compound 8 kilometers away. At the mission window that was closing with every second. Sir, Doc said quietly, I can stabilize him, but he can't shoot. 0 depth perception. Shoulders destroyed. Can he survive 48 hours? If we keep him warm, and the wound doesn't get infected, and he doesn't go into shock. Doc's tone made clear those were all very big ifs. But he's combat ineffective. Garrett looked at the sky, at the stars that had watched empires rise and fall in these mountains. We abort, he said finally. Get Preacher back to Phoenix. Sir, Bull stepped forward. Al-Zirani, if we abort, he goes to ground. We lose him. I'm not sacrificing the mission for one man. We always bring our people home. Always. With respect, Luther said, what if there's another option? Everyone looked at him. Maya. The name hung in the thin mountain air, heavy with implications. Garrett turned to her slowly. In the red glow of chemical light sticks Doc had cracked for medical work, his face looked carved from granite. No. Sir, she qualified perfect. She's got the skill. She's got 1,000-yard qual. This is 3,000 meters, in mountains, with variable wind. It's not the same thing. Neither is letting Al-Zirani walk away. Bull's voice was rough. Sir, I was wrong about her. Completely wrong. But she made that shot yesterday. Moving target, cold bore. She's capable. Maya knelt beside Preacher, pressing a pressure bandage to his shoulder where blood seeped through Doc's work. The fabric turned warm and wet under her hands. She looked at the injured sniper's face, peaceful despite the damage, like he was sleeping. She thought about her father, walking into an ambush in Fallujah, knowing it was a trap, going anyway because 40 Marines needed him. Legacy wasn't just skill, it was choice. The choice to stand when standing was hard, to shoot when the shot was impossible, to be more than just Reaper's daughter, to be someone who made decisions that mattered. Maya stood slowly, looked at Garrett. I can make the shot. You don't know what you're saying. 3,247 meters. Her voice was steady, calm. Elevation, 9,200 feet. Temperature, approximately -2 Celsius. Wind, 8 to 15 miles per hour, variable direction. Bullet drop, 341.2 minutes of angle. Flight time, 4.2 seconds. Coriolis effect, 0.8 minutes of angle right. Spin drift, 1.1 minutes of angle right. She paused. I know exactly what I'm saying. Knowing the math isn't the same as making the shot. Then teach me. Maya stepped closer to Garrett. You have 10 hours before the shoot window. You were Reaper's best student. He trained you. Train me in 10 hours. That's enough time to remind me what I already know. Maya's voice didn't waver. My father taught me first. You taught him. Circle completes. The decision played across Garrett's face. Duty versus pragmatism. Protection versus mission. Finally, he nodded. Get Preacher stabilized and bivouacked here. Doc stays with him. Bull and Luther provide security. Maya and I continue to ridge position. He looked at Maya. 10 hours. I'll teach you everything I know. But if you can't make the shot when the time comes, we abort. Clear? Clear. They moved through darkness like ghosts, leaving behind Preacher's shallow breathing and Doc's quiet prayers. The 8 kilometers to ridge position felt longer than the 8 they'd already traveled. Each step weighted with new purpose. Garrett set a slower pace now, stopping frequently to test Maya's knowledge. Wind check. Maya closed her eyes, felt the air on her face. 11 miles per hour from 2 o'clock. Steady, no gusts. How do you know no gusts? The sound, gusts whistle. This is smooth flow. Temperature effect on powder burn. Every 10 degrees Celsius change affects muzzle velocity by approximately 4%. We're at -2. Rifle will be cold soaked. Estimate velocity loss of 30 to 35 feet per second from standard. They climbed. Rock gave way to snow, then back to rock. The Hindu Kush tested every muscle, every joint, every cell that needed oxygen the thin air wouldn't provide. Tell me about training, Garrett said after an hour. Holloway said he's known for 4 years, but you were training before that. Maya was quiet for a moment. Then, I started when I was 17, 10 years ago. Every night I could get away. Drove to a private range outside Alexandria. Owner was a Vietnam vet. Didn't ask questions. Didn't care who I was. 10 years of secret practice. I told myself it was therapy, working through grief. But I was preparing. She paused. Part of me always knew this moment would come, that I'd have to choose, be Reaper's daughter or be Maya. Turns out I'm both. Your father would understand that. Would he? I spent 20 years resenting him for dying, for choosing those Marines over me, for leaving me alone. Maya's voice cracked. And now I'm doing the same thing, choosing the mission over safety, over sense. No, Garrett said. You're choosing to honor his sacrifice by being worthy of it. That's different. At 0500 hours, they reached Echo 7 Ridge. The position was perfect, a natural shelf of rock overlooking the valley, with the target compound visible 3,247 meters away. Garrett unpacked his ranging equipment, confirmed the distance with laser. 3247, exactly as briefed. Maya set up her father's rifle. The Macmillan TAC-50 settled onto its bipod like coming home. She checked the bore, the scope, the trigger pull. Everything perfect. Everything ready. Except her. Talk to me, Garrett said, settling beside her with his spotter scope. What are you feeling? Scared. Good. Fear makes you careful. He adjusted the scope. Now tell me the shot. Maya looked through her scope. The compound jumped into magnification. 3 buildings, the eastern balcony, the door that would open and reveal her target. Range 3247, elevation angle -4.3 degrees, Temperature, -2 Celsius. Wind, she paused, feeling. 10 miles per hour. Variable direction 2 to 3 o'clock. Calculations. 341.2 MOA elevation. Wind call 7.2 MOA right for 10 miles per hour. But if wind shifts to 3 o'clock, I need 8.8. Coriolis effect at this latitude adds 0.8 MOA right. Temperature effect, -1.1 MOA elevation. She closed her eyes, the math flowing like music. Total adjustments, 341.2 MOA up, 9.1 MOA right, adjustable if wind changes. You memorized all that? My father taught me to see numbers like colors. This isn't math. It's just knowing. Garrett was silent for a moment. He taught you well, better than he taught me. They waited as the sky shifted from black to gray, that liminal space before dawn when the world held its breath. Maya thought about Preacher 8 kilometers away, bleeding, about her father, dead 20 years, about all the moments in life that came down to single decisions, single shots, single chances. Tell me about Fallujah, she said quietly. What happened after my father died? Garrett adjusted his spotter scope, checking the compound for movement. We extracted. 40 Marines made it out. 3 didn't, including Reaper. We carried his body 12 kilometers through hostile territory because we don't leave our people. Did he suffer? It was fast. He made his shots, took out 7 tangos in 11 seconds. They returned fire. He was hit twice, chest and neck. Garrett's voice went rough. He died in my arms. Took him maybe 90 seconds. What did he say? Garrett was quiet for so long, Maya thought he wouldn't answer. He said, "Tell Maya I see her, Mom. Tell her it doesn't hurt." Garrett's voice broke. "Tell her I'm finally free." Maya felt tears threaten. He was tired. He was 47. He'd been at war for 25 years. Yeah, he was tired. Garrett looked at her. But he wasn't tired of you. Never you. You were what kept him human, what gave him reason to come home. At 05:35, Luther's voice crackled over the radio. Hunter 7, Overwatch, contact, 20-plus hostiles, 500 meters north of your position, moving your direction. Garrett grabbed binoculars, scanned. Confirmed, security sweep, they're early. ETA to your position? Maya asked. 6 minutes. Target window is 0550 to 0609. I know. Garrett keyed his radio. Bulldog, be advised we have company inbound. Maintain position in silence. He looked at Maya. We have a problem. Security sweep arrives at our position in 6 minutes. Target might appear in 15 minutes. We'll be in a firefight when the shot window opens. Or we abort now, Maya said. Or we abort. She looked through her scope, at the compound, at the balcony where a man who'd killed her father would stand for 14 seconds, offering the only chance for justice she might ever get. There's a third option, Maya said slowly. I'm listening. Al-Zirani's running a security sweep. That means he knows something's wrong. Possibly knows we're here. She turned to Garrett. If he's paranoid enough for random sweeps, he's paranoid enough to check the perimeter himself before his scheduled appearance. That's speculation. No, that's psychology. You don't send security unless you're worried. And if you're worried, You want visual confirmation before you expose yourself. Maya checked her watch. I think he appears early, not 0600. Closer to 0550, maybe even 0545. If you're wrong, we're blown and he escapes. If I'm right, we complete the mission before the sweep reaches us. Maya looked at him. Trust me. Trust my father's training. The mountains held their breath. Somewhere below, 20 Taliban fighters moved toward their position, minutes away. Somewhere in the compound, a man who'd killed Reaper prepared for his day, unaware that legacy was about to come calling. Garrett keyed his radio. Bulldog, stand by. We're holding position for early target appearance. Say again, sir? We have... I know what we have. Trust Maya's read. Hunter 7 out. He looked at her. If this goes wrong, it won't. You sound like your father. Good. At 0543, as security forces closed to 600 meters, as the sky shifted from gray to pale blue, the compound door opened. Maya's heart rate, steady at 62, dropped to 54. Rashid al-Zurani stepped onto the balcony. He wore traditional Afghan robes, brown and weathered. His gray beard caught the early light. He held binoculars, scanning the mountains, looking for threats he could sense but not see. Target, Garrett whispered. Range 3247. Wind 10 miles per hour. 2 o'clock. Steady. You have the shot. Maya's world narrowed. The rifle became her body. The scope became her eye. The bullet waiting in the chamber became her will. She felt the wind on her face. 10 miles per hour. Steady. No gusts yet. The morning calm before thermal currents started. Her breathing slowed. 4-count inhale. Hold. 6-count exhale. Heart rate 52. Al-Zurani turned slightly, presenting his back. Not ideal. Center mass was best, but backs worked if the angle was right. Maya settled the crosshair between his shoulder blades, adjusted for wind, for distance, for the weight of 20 years of grief and 10 years of training. Wind shift, Garrett said. 12 miles per hour now, 3 o'clock. Maya adjusted. 8.8 MOA right instead of 7.2. Small changes at this distance meant life or death. He's turning, Garrett said. About to go back inside. 8 seconds. That's all she had, maybe less. Maya inhaled, full breath, let half out, held. Found the space between heartbeats where the world went still and eternal and perfect. Her finger, feather light on the trigger, began to squeeze. Not a pull, a squeeze. Gentle. Inevitable. The Macmillan TAC-50 roared. Recoil slammed into her shoulder. 36 foot-pounds of energy trying to break bones. Maya absorbed it, rode it, stayed on target through the scope. The bullet left the barrel at 2,800 feet per second, 50 caliber, 750 grains of copper-jacketed lead, angry and precise. Flight time, 4.2 seconds. Maya watched through her scope, not breathing, as the bullet flew. She could almost see it. A dark streak against pale sky. Arcing down from the ridge toward the valley. Dropping. Wind pushing it right, gravity pulling it down. Al-Zurani was halfway through the doorway when the bullet arrived. The impact was catastrophic. The 50 caliber round hit between his shoulder blades with 8,400 foot-pounds of energy. His body jerked forward, then collapsed, disappearing into the doorway. "Hit," Garrett said, voice tight with awe. "Confirmed hit. Target down." Maya chambered another round automatically, training overriding emotion. She kept the scope on the doorway, watching for movement. Nothing. "Confirmed kill," Garrett said. "Holy God, Maya. 3,247 meters. That's a world record. That's impossible." The compound exploded into activity. Fighters poured from buildings. Alarms sounded. Chaos bloomed like blood in water. "Security sweep, breaking into run," Luther reported over radio. They heard the shot. "ETA, your position, 4 minutes. "Time to leave," Garrett said. He started packing gear with professional speed. Maya stared through the scope at the doorway where Al-Zirani had fallen, where the man who'd killed her father had breathed his last breath, never knowing his death had been waiting 20 years. She'd imagined this moment 1,000 times. Justice delivered. Her father avenged. But standing there with cordite still sharp in her nostrils, and a dead man 3,000 meters away, Maya felt nothing. Just numbness. Like someone had carved out the part of her that was supposed to feel vindication and left a void in its place. "Maya," Garrett's hand on her shoulder. "We need to move. Now." She nodded, packed the rifle with mechanical precision, forcing her hands steady through pure will. From the enormity of what she'd just done, from the knowledge that she'd crossed a line her father had crossed, and there was no going back. They ran. The Hindu Kush Mountains, indifferent to human drama, watched as two figures sprinted across rock and scree, pursued by men with guns who didn't know they were chasing ghosts. Behind them, 2,400 meters of ground between ridge and rendezvous point, a fighting retreat that would test everything they had. Maya transitioned to her M4 carbine, covering sectors while Garrett called coordinates for artillery support. She dropped 8 Taliban fighters during the 42-minute retreat, controlled bursts at ranges between 200 and 400 meters, faces she could see, men who dropped and didn't rise. 9 kills total today. 9 men who'd woken up that morning not knowing it was their last. A grazing round caught her left shoulder. The impact spun her sideways. Hot pain bloomed, but she kept moving, kept fighting, kept living. Because that's what warriors did. By the time the Black Hawk extracted them, Maya had crossed into a place her father had been. A place where you carried the weight of death you'd caused and learned to keep walking anyway. She'd become what everyone said she would be. She just wasn't sure she wanted to be it anymore. The Black Hawk carved through Afghan sky like a bullet through flesh. Fast, violent, purposeful. Maya sat pressed against the vibrating hull, her shoulder throbbing where a Taliban round had kissed flesh, her hands still trembling with adrenaline that refused to fade. 9 men dead because Maya Kincaid had pulled triggers. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Garrett sat beside her, his face streaked with dust and dried blood from a grazing wound across his cheek. He'd barely spoken since they'd loaded onto the helicopter, just checked his team methodically, counted heads, confirmed everyone was breathing. Now he looked at Maya. Really looked. The way people looked at soldiers after their first combat, searching for cracks, for breaks, for the moment when the person you were disappeared and something else took residence in your skin. "Talk to me," he said, voice barely audible over the rotors. Maya stared at her hands. They looked like her hands, same fingers, same scars from working on rifles, but they felt foreign, like they belonged to someone else. "I killed 9 people today," she said. "You completed the mission. You saved your team. You did what had to be done. Does it get easier?" She looked at him. "Did it get easier for you?" Garrett was silent for a long time. "No," he said finally. "Anyone who says it gets easier is lying or broken. You just get better at carrying it." He paused. "Your father asked me the same question once, after his first kill in combat, Kosovo, 1999. What did you tell him?" "I told him the day it stops bothering you is the day you need to stop pulling triggers." Garrett leaned back against the hull. "You're not a killer, Maya. You're a warrior. There's a difference. Warriors do hard things because someone has to. Killers do hard things because they want to." Maya closed her eyes. Behind her eyelids, she saw Al-Zirani's body jerk from the bullet impact, saw the 8 other men drop during the retreat, saw their faces frozen in that final moment between living and not. "I don't feel like a warrior. I feel like I'm drowning." "Then drown. Let it wash over you. Don't fight it." Garrett's voice held hard-won wisdom. The ones who fight it, who try to pretend they're fine, they're the ones who break later. Feel everything now. Process it, then pack it away somewhere safe. The helicopter banked hard, beginning its descent toward Bagram Airfield. Through the open door, Maya could see the sprawling base, acres of tents and buildings and aircraft. A small American city carved into hostile territory. She thought about her father. 25 years of this. 25 years of carrying the weight of men he'd killed. Men who'd deserved it, and men who'd just been in the wrong place. 25 years of coming home and pretending to be normal, while the ghosts lived in his eyes. No wonder he'd walked into that trap. No wonder he'd been tired. Maya understood now. Finally understood. Her father hadn't died because he was a hero. He died because he was exhausted. Because after 25 years of war, the idea of saving 40 Marines and finding peace was better than surviving and carrying the weight for another 25 years. The Black Hawk touched down. Medical personnel swarmed. But Preacher was already gone, medevaced during their extraction. The rest of them stood on the tarmac, suddenly purposeless, the adrenaline crash hitting like a physical weight. "Debrief in 4 hours," Garrett said. "Get food, get clean, get some rest if you can." But Maya knew she wouldn't sleep. Couldn't sleep. Not with 9 faces still fresh in her memory. Not with the hollow feeling in her chest where certainty used to be. She'd made the impossible shot, broken a world record, killed the man who'd killed her father. And she felt nothing but empty. The debrief took place in a secure room deep inside Bagram's intelligence section. Windowless, soundproof. The kind of room where classified operations were discussed and uncomfortable truths were filed away under layers of bureaucracy and need-to-know restrictions. 3 men sat across the table from Maya and Garrett, 2 CIA officers in civilian clothes that somehow made them more obviously government than any uniform could. 1 Army colonel with a Special Operations Command patch and eyes that cataloged everything, forgot nothing, and judged with the cold precision of a machine built for assessment. "Commander Iron," the colonel said, voice flat and professional. "Walk me through the mission." Garrett's report was crisp, professional, delivered without emotion, like he was describing a training exercise rather than an operation where men had died. He detailed the infiltration, the IED blast, Preacher's injuries, the decision to continue with Maya as primary shooter. He described the shot with technical precision, range, wind, environmental conditions. Result: 3,247 meters, one of the CIA officers said. He looked at Maya with the kind of intensity that made her skin crawl. That's beyond the current record by approximately 328 meters. He consulted a tablet. Previous record was Carlos Hathcock at 2,500 yards. Yours is 3,247 meters, 2 miles and change. He looked up. You made this shot, Miss Kincaid? Yes, sir. Under combat stress, with hostile forces closing on your position. Yes, sir. The three men exchanged glances. Some unspoken communication passed between them that Maya couldn't read but didn't like. This stays classified, the colonel said finally. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. For Miss Kincaid's protection and operational security. No official record, no public acknowledgement, no recognition. The shot never happened. Understood? Understood, Garrett said. Maya nodded. Part of her felt relief. She didn't want recognition, didn't want to be famous for killing, didn't want her face on the news with some headline about Reaper's daughter breaking records. The CIA officer opened a folder, slid documents across the table with the careful precision of someone handling evidence. We recovered intelligence from al-Zirani's compound, communications logs, planning documents, correspondence dating back 20 years. He paused, and in that pause, Maya felt the universe shift. The 2004 Fallujah ambush was a trap planned specifically to kill Reaper Kincaid. Al-Zirani spent 6 months setting it up, sacrificed 14 of his own fighters to make it credible. Your father identified it as a trap within minutes of receiving the brief. He knew, and he went anyway. The officer pushed a document toward Maya. Official military transcript, radio communications, November 12th, 2004. 14:37 hours local time. Her father's voice, preserved in official type. Actual, this is Reaper, requesting permission for Overwatch position, grid November Echo 7-2. Reaper, actual, negative. Intel suggests possible ambush. Recommend abort and RTB. Actual, Reaper, copy ambush assessment, but Falcon platoon needs extraction cover. 40 Marines, 2 clicks out, under heavy fire. They need time. Reaper, we can call air support. You don't need to. Actual, it's a choice, sir. My choice. I'm the best shot. I've got the angle. I can take enough of them to give Falcon their window. Pause. 10 seconds of silence, preserved forever in the official record. Sir, tell my daughter something for me. Tell Maya 3 things. First, I chose those 40 men because I already had 27 years with her, and they deserved 50 more years with their families. Second, tell her I'm sorrier about missing her wedding than I am about dying. Third, tell her she's free from my shadow. She doesn't owe me glory. She owes herself happiness. Another pause. And tell her this was my choice. Nobody's fault, just my choice. Reaper out. The room fell silent. Maya stared at the words until they blurred. Her father's final thoughts before walking into death with eyes open, before choosing 40 strangers over his own daughter. He made that choice, Garrett said softly. Nobody ordered him. He volunteered because that's who Reaper was. He chose them over me. Maya's voice shook. No, the colonel said, and his tone held surprising gentleness. He chose to give you a world where 40 families stayed intact, where 40 Marines came home. He chose to be the kind of father who taught his daughter what honor looks like, even if the lesson cost him everything. Maya felt tears burning, threatening. She refused them. Not here. Not in front of these men who dealt in death like it was paperwork. Is there anything else, sir? The colonel exchanged glances with the CIA officers. Not at this time. You'll be contacted regarding recognition for this operation. Dismissed. The debrief concluded with paperwork, signatures, the bureaucratic transformation of violence into administrative record. By the time Maya walked out of the secure room, the Afghan sun was setting, painting the Hindu Kush mountains in shades of orange and red that looked like the mountains were bleeding. Garrett walked with her across the base. They didn't speak. Sometimes silence was the only language that fit. At the transient quarters, Garrett paused. You did good today. Better than good. Exceptional. I don't feel exceptional. I feel hollow. That's normal. First kills always feel that way. He studied her. Your father felt the same way. He told me once that the weight gets lighter, not because you stop caring, but because you learn to balance it with the good you do, the lives you save, the missions you complete, the evil you stop from spreading. Did it work? Did he find that balance? He found it in you. Garrett's voice was quiet. Every letter he wrote, every story he told about you, every time he mentioned your name, that was his balance. You were his proof that the world was worth fighting for. Maya stopped in the corridor outside the secure room. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, sterile, cold. She pressed her back against the concrete wall and closed her eyes. The transcript had made it real. Her father's voice, preserved in military shorthand. His choice, documented in official record. Not a story anymore. Not a memory softened by time. Just the hard truth that James Reaper Kincaid had chosen 40 strangers over his own daughter. And now, she'd done the same thing. Chosen the mission over safety. Chosen preacher's life over her own peace. Chosen to become exactly what her father had been. The weight of it pressed down like atmospheric pressure at altitude. Heavy. Inescapable. Maya. Garrett's voice. Quiet. He'd followed her out. You did what he couldn't. What? You made the shot and lived. You came home. That's the difference. She opened her eyes. Is it enough? Ask me in 20 years. He squeezed her shoulder gently, then walked away, leaving Maya standing in the gathering darkness, trying to figure out if she was strong enough to carry what her father had left her. The flight home was a blur. Cargo planes and commercial airlines and airports where no one looked twice at the small woman who'd changed the course of a war in 14 seconds of impossible precision. 6 weeks passed. September became October. Maya returned to Quantico, to her workshop, to the familiar smell of gun oil and metal shavings. But it felt different now. She felt different. Like she'd left part of herself in those Afghan mountains and brought back something else. Something heavier. She didn't sleep well. When she did, she saw faces. 9 men falling. Al-Zarani jerking forward. Preacher's blood on her hands. On a gray morning in late October, Colonel Holloway met her at the base entrance. Walk with me, he said. They walked in silence toward the sniper school building, past Marines running training evolutions, past ranges where rifles spoke in practice cadence. "How are you?" Holloway asked. "Complicated." "Good." Simple answers after complex events mean you're not processing correctly. They stopped overlooking Range 400. "Garrett's report was glowing. Said you made decisions under pressure that saved the mission. Said you have tactical instincts that exceed your shooting skills." "I did my job." "You exceeded your job. Which brings me to why we're here." Holloway turned to face her. "I've arranged something. A ceremony. Private. Just people who need to know." "I don't want—" "I know. But this isn't about what you want. It's about what you've earned." His voice softened. "And what your father would have wanted." Before Maya could respond, Holloway started walking. She followed, legs moving on instinct. Inside the sniper school building, the main classroom had been transformed. Chairs in rows, maybe 40 people in dress uniforms. At the front, a podium and an American flag worn from operations, faded in places where sun and wind and war had leached the color. Maya recognized faces. Garrett and his team. The Marine captain from Firebase Phoenix. Several sniper school instructors. And scattered throughout the room, older men. 50s, 60s, even a few pushing 70. Wearing uniforms with scout sniper tabs and ribbons that told stories of wars fought in jungles and deserts and mountains across decades. "Who are they?" she whispered. "Marines your father trained. Marines who served with him. Marines who knew Reaper." Holloway guided her forward. They came to honor his legacy. A man stood at the podium, ancient and weathered like driftwood. 76 years old with a spine that age and combat couldn't bend. His uniform bore more ribbons than Maya could count, accumulated across wars she'd only read about in history books. "Command Sergeant Major Everett Stone Palmer," Holloway murmured. "Ladies and gentlemen," Stone's voice carried decades of authority, the kind of voice that had ordered men into fire and brought them home again. "We are gathered to recognize exceptional achievement in precision marksmanship under combat conditions." He looked directly at Maya. "Maya Kincaid, step forward." Maya's legs moved on their own. She found herself before the podium, before Stone, before eyes that understood what she'd done and what it cost. Stone looked at her with eyes that had watched empires fall. 28 years ago, I trained a young Marine named James Kincaid. He was arrogant, stubborn, and gifted beyond measure. I spent 6 months breaking his ego and 2 years teaching him everything I knew about putting bullets through people at impossible distances. A few quiet chuckles from the older Marines. War humor, the kind that didn't translate outside the tribe. Reaper became the best student I ever trained. He exceeded my skills by his 3rd deployment, made shots I wouldn't have attempted, saved lives I couldn't have saved. Stone paused. When he died in Fallujah, I lost proof that the world could produce men like that. Heroes who chose honor over survival. Maya felt her throat tighten. 3 weeks ago, Colonel Holloway told me James Kincaid's daughter had made a shot at 3,247 meters. Under combat conditions, under enemy fire, with hostile forces closing. Stone's voice dropped. I told him that was impossible. That only Reaper could have made that shot. Even Reaper would have called it low percentage. He stepped down from the podium, approached Maya directly, reached into his uniform jacket and pulled out a small wooden box.
worn smooth by handling. Your father gave me this before his last deployment, told me to hold it until his daughter was ready, until she'd proven she was more than his legacy, until she'd become her own legend. Stone opened the box. Inside, on faded red velvet, lay a small metal tab, worn, scratched, stained with sweat and time and desert sand.
Maya recognized it instantly. Her father's scout sniper tab. James Reaper Kincaid wore this for 15 years, through Iraq, through Afghanistan, through every mission where he put his life on the line. Stone lifted the tab with gentle reverence. He wanted you to have it, not as inheritance, as recognition that you'd earned the right to carry what it represents. He held it out toward her chest. Maya stepped back. No, sir. Shock rippled through the room. Stone's hand froze. I can't accept this, Maya said quietly. Her voice shook but held steady enough. I made one shot. My father made thousands. I killed 9 men in one day. He saved hundreds over 25 years. I'm not qualified to wear his tab. I'm not him. I'll never be him. The room fell into absolute silence. Stone studied her for a long moment. Then slowly, he smiled. It transformed his weathered face, made him look decades younger. You just proved you're exactly who he wanted you to be. Maya blinked. Sir? Your father refused this tab 3 times before I finally pinned it on him by force. Said he didn't deserve it. Said the tab was for warriors who'd proven their humanity, not just their kill counts. Stone's eyes gleamed. He wanted you to understand something that took him 15 years to learn. That being a sniper isn't about the shots you make. It's about knowing when not to take them, about carrying the weight with humility, about being more than just a killer with good aim. He stepped forward. Maya didn't retreat this time. You've earned this, Stone said firmly. Not for the shot, for knowing the shot doesn't define you. He pinned the tab to Maya's shirt. The ancient metal settled over her heart, and Maya felt something shift inside. Some locked door opening, some weight lifting, some part of her father finally coming home. Stone stepped back, came to attention, and saluted. Then, like a wave spreading through the room, all 35 veteran snipers rose to their feet. They stood at attention, backs straight despite decades of wear, and saluted in unison. The silence was deafening. These men who'd fought in Korea, in the Cold War, in Desert Storm, in Fallujah and Kandahar, stood as one to honor Reaper's daughter. Stone's voice rang out. To Reaper, and to his daughter, who's better than him. To Reaper's daughter, the room echoed. Applause erupted, not polite, real, from people who understood what that tab meant, what that shot represented, what it cost to do hard things in dark places for people who would never know your name. Maya couldn't hold the tears anymore. They came like a dam breaking. 20 years of grief and fear and doubt finally resolving into something she could carry, something that didn't crush her under its weight. Stone hugged her. This ancient warrior pulled her close in an embrace that felt like being wrapped in history itself. In the collective experience of every sniper who'd ever looked through a scope and chosen to pull the trigger for something bigger than themselves. He loved you more than life, Stone whispered. Never doubt that. This is just confirmation of what Reaper always knew. That you were stronger than him, better than him. Because you understand what he took 15 years to learn. The ceremony continued. Garrett told the mission story with clinical precision, but his voice broke when he described Maya's tactical prediction about Al-Zirani appearing early. Bull stood slowly, his Texas Rangers cap in his hands. His voice, usually loud and brash, came out quiet, almost broken. I was wrong, he said. Completely, utterly wrong. I judged her by her size, her gender, her age. Figured she'd fold under pressure. Figured Daddy's rifle was all she had going for her. He paused, jaw working. But up there in those mountains, when Preacher went down and we had 6 minutes before hostiles overran our position, she didn't fold. She stepped up. Made a call I wouldn't have made. Predicted al-Zurani would appear early based on psychology, not intel. And she was right. Bull's voice cracked. She made a shot I've seen maybe 3 men attempt in 30 years. And she made it under fire, wounded, exhausted. She saved all our lives. And I owe her an apology I'll never be able to fully pay. He looked at Maya. Ma'am, you're not just the best operator I've served with. You're the best I've ever seen. Period. Doc spoke about Maya's refusal of pain medication after being shot, about how she'd kept fighting even wounded, about how she'd held pressure on Preacher's wounds with hands that didn't shake, even though she must have been terrified. Then the older Marines shared stories about Reaper, stories Maya had never heard.
About her father as a young Marine, cocky and scared in equal measure. About impossible shots he'd made in Ramadi and Fallujah and a dozen other places whose names she didn't recognize. About a warrior who'd made killing look easy, but who'd cried after accidentally shooting a civilian in crossfire. About a man who remained humble through it all, who taught younger Marines that the rifle was just a tool, and the real weapon was the mind behind it. By the time it concluded, Maya was emotionally exhausted, barely standing. Her legs felt like water, her chest hurt from crying. But it was a good hurt, a clean hurt, the kind of pain that came from lancing an old wound and letting the poison drain. Holloway approached as the room emptied. There's more. 3 things. I don't know if I can... Job offers. He pulled out folders. First, instructor position. Quantico. $190,000 annually. They want you teaching the next generation everything Reaper taught you. He opened the second folder. Marine Corps consultant, part-time, $165,000. You'd work with active duty Marines, advisory role, training development, doctrine refinement. Third folder. Garrett's company, partnership, equal profit share, base of $275,000 plus. But it means field work. It means more missions, more shots, more nights where you can't sleep because you see their faces. Maya stared at the folders. 3 different futures, 3 different versions of herself. I can't decide right now. You don't have to decide now. Holloway squeezed her shoulder. But know this, your father's legacy continues with you. How you carry it forward is your choice, not his, not mine, yours. That night, Maya sat alone in her Alexandria apartment, staring at the wooden box Stone had given her along with the job offers. Inside, beneath the folders, she found something she'd never seen, a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. Her father's handwriting, for Maya. Open when you've made your choice. Her hands trembled. This was it, his final message. Not the radio transcript, not the stories other people told. This was James Reaper Kincaid, talking directly to his daughter across 20 years of death and silence. Maya broke the seal. Inside, a single sheet covered in her father's precise handwriting. My dearest Maya, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry. Sorry I won't see you graduate, won't walk you down the aisle, won't meet your children, won't grow old watching you become the woman I know you'll be. But most of all, I'm sorry if you think you have to become me. That's the opposite of what I want. You probably think I wanted you to be a soldier, a sniper, another reaper carrying forward some legacy. You're wrong. I trained you because I saw a gift greater than mine, natural ability surpassing anything I could teach. I wanted you to have the option to use it if you chose. But Maya, hear me clearly. You don't owe me anything. Not continuation of my career, not vengeance, not becoming a warrior because your father was one. You owe yourself everything. The chance to discover who Maya Kincaid is, what she wants, what gives her life meaning beyond impossible shots. The shot you've made, the one that led you to open this, proves you have skill. But skill without purpose is mechanics. I don't want you mechanical. I want you fully, completely, beautifully human. 3 things. First, I died by choice. If I'm gone, it's because I sacrificed myself for something that mattered more than survival. Don't grieve the decision. Honor it by living fully. Second, you are more than my daughter, more than my legacy, more than my skills wrapped in a smaller package. You are Maya Kincaid, unique, exceptional, worthy of respect and love regardless of whether you ever pick up a rifle again. Third, I'm prouder of who you are than what you do. Your kindness matters more than your accuracy. Your character matters more than your kills. Your humanity matters more than your warrior skills. The world will try to define you by your talents. Don't let it. Define yourself by your choices, by the life you build, by the people you love and the causes you serve, by the version of yourself you see in the mirror. Be better than me, Maya, not just as a shooter, as a human being, as someone who uses violence only when necessary and chooses peace whenever possible, as someone who teaches as much as she fights, as someone who builds as much as she destroys. You don't need to prove anything to anyone, not to the Marines, not to the world, not even to me. You proved everything I needed the first time you smiled at me as a baby. Everything else is footnotes. Live fully. Fight when you must. Teach always. Love deeply. And know that wherever I am, whatever comes after, I'm watching you with pride so profound it would break me if I wasn't already so completely filled with joy at having been your father. Shoot straight. Shoot true, my beautiful daughter, and when you're done shooting, put down the rifle and dance. All my love, forever and always, Dad, Reaper. Maya read the letter 3 times, then a 4th. Each reading uncovered new layers, new permissions, new freedoms. Her father hadn't wanted her to become him. He'd wanted her to become herself. And Maya, sitting with tears streaming and a smile breaking through like sunrise through storm, finally understood. She was Maya Kincaid, instructor, operator, warrior, teacher, Reaper's daughter, and her own person, capable of impossible shots and choosing not to take them, strong enough to kill and wise enough to know when killing wasn't the answer. She didn't have to choose between teaching and operating, between peace and war, between being her father's legacy and being herself. She could be all of it, everything, the full, complicated, beautiful reality of a human being who contained multitudes. The next morning, Maya drove to Quantico early. The range was empty, morning fog still burning off. She unpacked her father's TAC-50, set it up on the 1,000-yard line.
loaded 3 rounds with careful reverence. The first shot for her father, for Reaper, for the man who'd taught her everything and wanted her to exceed him. The second shot for herself, for Maya, for the woman who'd made impossible shots and learned she was more than her accuracy. The third shot for the future, for whoever she'd become, for all the choices still ahead. 3 shots, 3 perfect hits, 1.6 inches at 1,000 yards, better than her qualification day. Maya safed the rifle and stood, looked at the Virginia hills. They weren't as dramatic as the Hindu Kush, but they held their own beauty, their own promise. A vehicle approached. Garrett's truck. He got out, walked over with 2 cups of coffee steaming in the cold air. "Practicing?" he asked, handing her a cup. "Remembering. Good memories. The best ones." Maya sipped. The coffee was terrible, but warm and present and real. "I've decided about the jobs. And I'll take the instructor position, and I'll consult with your firm. Twice a year, maximum. But I'm done being a full-time operator." Garrett smiled. "Your father would approve." "I'm not doing this for him. I'm doing it for me." She looked at him. "My father wanted me better than him. I think that means being more complete, more human, choosing when to fight and when to teach. Understanding both are necessary." "That sounds like wisdom." "It sounds like finally being free." Garrett raised his cup in salute. "To freedom, then, and to choices." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the morning sun burn off the fog. 2 warriors, different generations, different paths, united by understanding what it meant to carry rifles and responsibilities in equal measure. "Ready to go?" Garrett asked finally. "Where to?" "Breakfast. Then you've got your first instructor class at 1000. 12 Marines who think they know everything about shooting." Maya smiled. A real smile. The first one in 6 weeks that didn't feel like she was forcing it. "Perfect. I'm going to teach them what Reaper taught me. That the hardest shot isn't the longest one. It's knowing when not to take the shot at all." They walked to their vehicles. Maya glanced in the rearview mirror as she drove away, saw the targets disappearing, saw her father's rifle case secured in the back seat, saw her reflection, tired eyes, coffee-stained smile, scout sniper tab visible over her heart. She looked like someone who'd found what most people search for and never find. She looked like someone who'd made peace with legacy and choice, with being extraordinary and being human, with carrying her father's memory while building her own future. She looked, Maya thought, like herself. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. 6 months later, Maya stood before her first graduating class at Quantico. 12 Marines who'd arrived cocky and left humble. One of them, a young woman from Idaho, had just qualified with a perfect score at 1,500 meters. Preacher's shoulder had healed, not perfectly, but enough. He taught advanced fieldcraft now, working alongside Maya. His right eye was glass, but his left could still read wind better than most. Bull sent postcards from Texas. Short messages. "Told my daughter about you. She wants to be a Marine now. Your fault." Doc retired to Ireland. sent photos of sheep and green hills. Much quieter than Bagram. Miss it sometimes. Miss you all. Luther ran comms for Garrett's company, still didn't make eye contact, still kept everyone alive. And Garrett? He visited twice a year, brought terrible coffee, listened to Maya talk about her students, never asked if she regretted her choice. She didn't. Some nights, Maya still saw faces. 9 men falling,
Al-Zarani jerking forward. But she also saw 12 Marines graduating. 20 more in the next class, hundreds over the years to come. Her father had saved 40 Marines in one day. Maya would save thousands over a lifetime, one lesson at a time. That, she'd finally understood, was legacy. Maya Kincaid had made the impossible shot, broken a world record, killed the man who'd killed her father, and learned that being extraordinary didn't mean being consumed by violence. It meant having the wisdom to choose when violence was necessary, and the courage to choose peace whenever possible. She was Reaper's daughter. She was her own person. She was both and neither, and everything the world needed from warriors who understood that the true battle wasn't against enemies abroad, but against the temptation to let conflict define you. And as she drove through the Quantico gates toward her new life, toward teaching and training, and occasionally answering the call to impossible shots in impossible places, Maya finally understood her father's last lesson. Shoot straight, shoot true, and when you're done shooting, put down the rifle and dance. She was learning to dance, and the music was beautiful.